going on, you guys? My name is Daniel and welcome back to the channel where we're everything on mirrorless Canon cameras. Don't forget to like and subscribe down below if you're into learning about how to use your Canon mirrorless gear better. So in this video, we're going to be going over how to use your Canon R6. It's just a walkthrough on the most important settings and things that you can do with this camera. Let's jump into it. First, I want to say it has 2 card slots, which was a big selling point for those of us that are in the world of event photography. If you're in a studio or whatever, 1 card is probably fine, but when you're doing an entire evening and you want to make sure that it's actually backed up, yeah, you're gonna also want to come in there and use 2 cards and then go into the record function card holder under the wrench number 1 and go down to record options, record to multiple, and it'll record to both of them. When you're shooting for video, it will only record to card slot 1 or card slot 2 if it only write to one of them though. So next, I think the most important ones are RAW, obviously. Going through here, external speedlight control. This is one that is really awesome. I have it set to toggle when I have, well, I guess when I have a speed light attached to it. Okay, so now I've attached the flash, but when you come into here, it will now allow you to control everything that you would normally control on the back panel. And I believe also when you go into multifunction, you are now able to, if you just want to set it over there to the side, you're now able to switch the exposure of the flash simply by using the multifunction, which makes it even faster than going in here and switching it this way and putting it up and set. That's reduces it by almost half the button pushes. Just use the multifunction. Next up, let's jump right in and auto white balance. So this camera shoots a little bit warm, and here are 2 ways to kind of negate that, and so that your images will, other than just going in here and choosing the correct, rather than coming in here and choosing the correct white balance all the time, you're able to go into white balance, and then white balance will be reproduced under this white balance priority. And there's ambience priority and white balance priority. This will help all indoors with tungsten lights. So it will help you keep a little bit of that warm look away. Then as well, I go into the color space, should be RGB, and white balance shift. I just shifted over 2, and that fixes pretty much 100% of the oversaturated look that comes out in the images. It saves you a little bit of time in post, and since you're shooting raw, it doesn't really matter even if it does make it a little bit too blue, because you can just reproduce and, you know, fix it in post. Picture style standard, clarity, exact same thing, just boost the clarity in your editing processes. These ones aren't the most useful, but you can do multiple exposures and focus bracketing. I find that there's not very many situations to use these in unless you're doing some type of astro or macro photography or something like that. Then the mechanical shutter, we'll talk about this real quick. You can't use the flash wall in the electronic first curtain or the electronic, and you will, and this isn't a problem with the rolling shutter while you're working with just people that are like a crowd or whatever, normal human speeds, but during sports, the electronic curtains will be reducing the amount of, or well, it'll have the electronic shutter, the little, like, how to describe it, distortions that come out of that. So sticking to mechanical for anything where there's super fast moving objects is the way to go. The mechanical shutter, getting the maximum amount of snaps in there, you're going to need the battery to be at its maximum health, and then you're also going to have a lens that is capable of doing that. Image stabilization mode, this is only for the what is it called, the video mode, really. If your lens does not have, for example, this lens right here, the 50mm 1.2, this lens does not have, it only has autofocus and then the ability to shoot closer to the lens. And so this one will have, when I hook it up, I'll show you that. So when I hook this up, it will show you the IS options for the IBIS that you have. IS on, there we go. Still photos, always on. 4, always on, yeah. Then, if I was to have a lens like this, which is the 100 EF 100 2.8, and it does have the obviously the settings there, the autofocus, and then the stabilization. The stabilization is controlled 100% by this button right here. So if your stabilization is on, you have lens stabilization and you have the IBIS stabilization. Then the image review, if you want to be able to view it in the viewfinder, this is where you would do it. Disabled is what I'm going to go with for right now. Metering timer, exposure simulation. The only time to turn this off is to have the flash attached, is really the only time that's very useful, or in studio settings. Grids, you can adjust them there. Histogram, brightness or RGB, and then turning it to small. And then this is an interesting one, which is the focusing distance display. When you usually have the manual focus and it has the bottom distance, it will always have that on if you turn that on. Some simple stuff in there. Then the VF format, I've enjoyed display number 2. And once again, I usually keep it to smooth, simply because the smooth setting is pretty much the way to go unless you're trying to save power. I guess you could go with the save power mode if you were in a studio setting. And then another movie thing, operating manual focus, method. You have a bunch of different methods here. Eye tracking is awesome, and you can also have it set to animals, which is really cool. Nothing crazy new there. Eye detect enabled. Disabled. Continuous autofocus, I would put that to disabled, otherwise your lens is always going to be searching for focus and it's going to eat up a lot of your battery life. And then enable that for movie servo, because that's what it's supposed to be doing, is always looking for your settings or for your focus. Touch and drag settings right here. These are going to enable you to use a portion of the screen to move the AF focus point while your face is up to the viewfinder. So what you have here is relative and absolute. So relative is if you're going to swipe in that direction, it's going to move the AF focus point in that direction. But if you do absolute, wherever you are touching on the little portion that you've enabled, it will go to that position on the screen. So I have mine set to the bottom right because it keeps it away from my face, but you can do the entire bottom, the entire top, the entire left, or the entire right. I would say the entire right or the bottom right is probably going to be the most common for the majority of shooters. Then we're going to go over here, AF assist firing beam. It's not useful unless you are in total pitch black, and if you're in an event or anything like that, definitely turn this off so it's not blasting people in the face. Focus guide on for manual focus peaking on. This will help you to see exactly where it is. I have the color set to red and the level high, so that wherever, if you're manually focusing, pulling focus, whatever is in focus will be like a tint of reddish pink looking color, and so you know that that section of the image is in focus. Kind of a useful setting. Next is the Servo AFs, and this is a pretty cool section if you are doing anything that is related to fast moving objects and everything like that. If you're just doing studio work and portraits, this is a pretty boring section for you. But once again, Servo AF1, case number 1, versatile multi-purpose settings, and what this will do is it pretty much just is anything that's moving. This will help you. You can go in here and adjust your sensitivity and tracking depending on what you want to do. If you're doing something where it's only one subject, locked on is probably going to be better, or if you're doing stuff where things are constantly changing, the more receptive is probably a better option. No, go back into here. Yes. And continuous tracking for subjects ignoring possible obstacles. So if you're doing bird photography and the birds are flying through trees and things like that, this one will probably be a better one. Or when people are doing things like tennis, as it shows there, where the objects are moving in front of their face, it's going to try and track and keep the tracking on their face as much as possible. Next is the moving for in and out of the frame, where they're coming in and out very quickly. And then with, like, if you're going to be focusing on a cat or any moving subjects that go in different directions very quickly. Those are pretty simple and straightforward, but something to play around with and see what works best for you, as every photographer has their own little things that they like to do. And next up, we have the rate button, which has a few different functions. I've kind of started to grow on me. As you have photos in there, you just press the rate button and it will give them 1 star. Or you can go in here and switch it to protect or erase images. Then the Wi-Fi connection, if you want to use any of your settings, like the bulb setting up top. So if you set it to the bulb setting, this will allow you to take a photo for as long as the trigger is down, but not everybody has a trigger. So if you go into your Wi-Fi connect and you connect up to your phone, then you'll be able to have your camera on a tripod and then use your phone to take these pictures of what's usually taken with it is things like fireworks. That's the biggest purpose it has, or astrophotography, or one of those type of things. So airplane mode, I want to turn that off, and then Wi-Fi settings enabled if you're trying to use this, but I'm trying to save more power, so I'm not going to have that. And then you have the name of your, but like I said, I am going for the increased power and longevity of the battery. And then here for the transfer over, you can do RAW and JPEG only. So you can just do RAWs only and only send over RAWs. That is the best way to do it, since your phone will take it. And that was usually a huge thing on the Canon R, is that if you're shooting an event, to back it up on your phone, but you could only back it up with JPEG, so it's nice that they allow you to use RAWs. Then, like I said, video recording function to card, select, multiple, that's the biggest one there to know. Then continuous format, date and time, rotate on. I find it really annoying if this isn't on, because then you have to go and rotate each one of the pictures, and if you have hundreds of pictures, then that just becomes very time consuming. Once again, in here we have power savings, which this will shut your camera off after 15 seconds is the best that you can do. And then eco mode, what this will do is if you have this on, it will give it 2 seconds, and then it will dim it, and then it will shut it out after 10 seconds. So you're going to save power that way, but it's also making it a little bit less usable. I found it that I could not use it with the eco mode while taking photos for any type of events or something like that. I just couldn't make it work. Then the screen viewfinder display. This one will allow you to switch it to only the screen. So sometimes if you're taking photos and you're doing it away from your face and you're not using the viewfinder and you go to switch things, just like that, it pulls it away, and that becomes super annoying over time as you try to adjust settings. So sometimes switching to the screen only will do that, and the viewfinder only setting there. Then as well, there's also the auto switch and the screen only. And what these will do is the auto switch will allow you to, while the articulating screen is out, you can then go into the viewfinder. Or is it the other way around? Oh, because I'm not in that. There we go. So now I can go into the viewfinder. I didn't have it selected, that was what. So the screen only, so now when I try to go into the viewfinder, it won't let me. Which makes sense, because otherwise you could snap off your articulating screen a little bit easier. Screen brightness and viewfinder brightness, they now have the auto setting, which is super nice because it will automatically adjust so that as you go around, you're not having a problem with the viewfinder being way too bright or way too dull. Then we're going to go over here into touch controls and standard HDMI resolution auto. I never really use that. Shutter at shutdown. Yes, we do want that. For some reason, if you wanted that to stay open, if you're going to do cleaning on it, then you would put that to stay open so that you can clean it. From there, reset camera, shooting modes. Unfortunately, these modes up here, the C1, C2, and C3 are not right now able to do video modes, which is pretty much what they're most useful for. I think they really wanted people to try and buy the R5 so they could get that little extra bit. And then battery information in here, it'll show you how many counts you've had, how many shots you've taken with it, the percentage of it, and then this is the battery health. When this is down to the far left and it's a yellow one, that means you should probably buy a new battery. Copyright information, just going in and putting your name and everything so that as you take photos, you will end up getting the copyright put into the metadata automatically so that it's not a issue in the future, so that people aren't, if somebody does take your photo for whatever reason and you forgot to put copyright in the name of the photo, then you are going to also have it in the metadata so that it helps you in the future when you're working with stuff like that. This is the firmware updates. You're going to have to take your SD card and go to the website and download the latest firmware onto here. It's super easy. There's so many videos about how to do that, so I'm not going to dive into that. And then you just simply come into here, firmware, and then update. But there's no update past this, so can't show you how to do that anyways. The next one is exposure increments. The lowest that you can do is 1/3. I find that to be very accurate, so we'll just keep it with that. I've grown to enjoy and use that. On the older DSLRs, it used to only be about 1/2 that you could have. Then the next thing up is buttons and customizations. I have this one, like I said, switched right here to allow me to use it with the flash, and that helps a lot while doing that. You can set some of these other ones. I have since I use the front button a lot for my single point AF, and then I also use the back button, but I enjoy the back button being eye focus, and I find that to be the most quick and accurate way to do it, and that works so that I don't have to switch anything when I go to an event. And I also have the back button to use, so I think that's probably the best setup for my personal use. Going down here further, we have all of these. I don't really ever use any of the lens buttons and everything, but they can be. Multi-dial function, like I said, you can use that to use it with the flash. Other than that, I don't ever use it. And then this one comes off normally, set to disabled. So this will allow you to move your AF focus point, which is, once again, I need to have a lens, but it allows you to use it. So I have both going at the same time. I have the joystick for the AF, and then I also have the touch and drag going on at the same time, and I find them to work perfectly in tandem, whichever one I get to first, or for whatever reason how I'm holding it, and then I go to there. We will slap a lens on it real quick so that I can show you. There we are. So some pretty straightforward things. Turn this back on. This lens is very cumbersome. So when we go in here, the info will toggle all of these selections that you have and remove them if you don't want them in there. And the way to change that is in the number 7 under shooting display, and then down here, histogram, grid, all these things, VF, info, toggle settings. You can adjust which ones you get inside there. Or when you have your screen settings, I have removed some of these because I don't use the black screen at all. That's kind of a relic from the DSLR days. And then these other two, I just have those two toggled. But that's how you'd switch that. Then we have the magnification. Okay, so you can't magnify while you have this one on, but if you use it's black right now, but it's all white now. So if you go in here and you do the magnification, this will zoom in 10x and 5x, 10x, and no x. And so that's another little useful thing. You can't rewrite what this does, unfortunately. And that is pretty much the entire overview of everything that I find to be useful on the Canon R6. And the mics and everything on here work really well, and we'll actually go into the video formats for a walkthrough on the R6 Next, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe on this video if you never want to miss out on future content that will help you use your Canon R6. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.